Thumbs up, Throwdown! Okay, how many people out there just got some memories unlocked by hearing that? Welcome to the world of Thumb Wrestling Federation. These were a series of 5-minute shorts that would air on, well, all kinds of networks like Nicktoons Network, Cartoon Network, CBBC, and many more. Though people seem to fondly remember this show, it's often relegated to the bin of, "Hey dude, remember this show? Righteous nostalgia trip!" Yeah, that kind of stuff. I think you know the kind of people I'm talking about. But here, we're not gonna just talk about the show for memory's sake. We're gonna take a deep dive into all 5 seasons, as well as some of the stuff that happened on the side, and see if Thumb Wrestling Federation holds up. Those of you who know me and know some of my side projects would know that the answer is, in short, yes. But let's find out why. It's time for a Thumb Wrestling Federation retrospective. Lock 'em up! The story of Thumb Wrestling Federation is that there is a wrestling league called, well, the Thumb Wrestling Federation. By the way, every character in this world is a right hand, and their head is their thumb. Except for Colonel Cossack. For some reason, he's a left hand? Anyways, the Thumb Wrestling Federation was a harmonious place until a young boy named Page Boy Skull, who later became Senator Skull, split the Thumb Wrestling Federation in half. Those who wanted to join him in taking over the world would be called the Evil Sinistras, and those who wanted to fight against him and make sure that the world stays safe would be the Mighty Dexteras. In each season, the Dexteras and Sinistras would do battle and get to the Thumb Wrestling Federation Championship. If the Dexteras won, the world would be safe for another day. If the Sinistras won, then Senator Skull would reign supreme. Each match is presided over by the 2 commentators, Dick Thompson and Colonel Cossack. Dick Thompson is a by-the-books wrestling superfan, and Colonel Cossack is himself a former wrestler who's kind of lost his mind. Now you're probably saying, okay, cool, commentators sound pretty nice. But how's about those wrestlers? Tell me a little bit more about them. Well, if I did that, we'd probably be here all day, so instead, I'll discuss some of the de facto main characters. There's Vinny Vitty Victory, the leader of the Mighty Dexteras. He's basically your New York, New Jersey tough guy with a heart of gold. There's Wasabi, an expressive and energetic poet who always speaks in rhyme. Hometown Huck, who's basically everybody's best friend and a good old country bumpkin from Middle America. This is something that's weird, but Hometown Huck talks with a southern accent, but he's from Nebraska. And he also talks about how he grew up on a farm, but he lives in Omaha. Omaha looks like this, guys. Not really a rural farming community. I don't know, maybe he's talking about the outskirts? I don't know. And finally, for the Dexteras, there's Evil Ira, a zany magician trickster who's kind of weird. Not just because he has magic powers and a third eye that can hypnotize people, but he seems to like causing people pain, which is not something that a Dextera should do, you know? Anyways, on to the Sinistras. We have the previously mentioned Senator Skull, who's the evilest evil who ever eviled, the Big Time, who's big, bad, loud, and proud, and Fuego, a vain Spanish dancer who really heats things up, and Itsy Bitsy, the half-human, half-spider girl who's as intelligent as she is venomous, and she is very, very venomous. We've also got some more minor ones, and I'll talk a little bit more about them later, but they're all just as, if not more colorful, and have some far more interesting mask designs. I mean, look at Gil here. That looks great. Season 1 is formatted really weirdly. So there were the 8 main characters that I laid out for you, right? Each one has 2 matches. For example, Evil Ira fights both the Amoeba and the Lost Viking. Hometown Huck fights the Scorchion and Sir Serpent. So on and so forth. Season 1 is sort of structured like a tournament. You've got the qualifiers, then the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship. But for some reason, each person that makes it to the quarterfinals has 2 chances to prove that they're worthy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. It leads to a lot of exciting matches and funny moments. It's just kinda strange. But spoiler alert, the formatting of how the tournament works is something that the show will struggle with from beginning to end. It's only gonna get weirder. Despite the fact that each episode is only a couple minutes long, they decide to have some lingering story elements throughout each season. The first one is that everyone believes that the Big Time is so strong that no one can ever beat him. The Big Time knows this too, and he has his eyes set on the championship, and nothing's gonna stop him. He even takes down members of his own team as they're about to win their matches, just so that he can be the one to go to the semifinals, and then later the championship. Then there's Evil Ira changing from a Dextera to a Sinistra. As Evil Ira progresses throughout the season, he gets nastier and sneakier, to the point where he injures the ref by dropping a piano on his head just for laughs. No other reason. His next match is fighting against longtime friend and teammate Hometown Huck. This is where he solidifies that he is, at his core, an evil Sinistra. Okay, so they're not deeper, in-depth storylines, but they're something. The other one I feel like I should mention is Pinky. Pinky is basically the little intern, helper... He's something, but he helps out around TWF headquarters, specifically for the Dexteras, and he's their biggest fan. He especially loves wasabi, and I mean he loves wasabi. Tons of people insult, jab at, and poke fun at Pinky because he's small and weak. And this is supposed to toughen him up and get him ready for the big moment at the end where he finally shows everyone that he can be a hero too. Except that's not what happens. Oh, sure, that's what the show pretends happens. But I know better. Pinky is breaking the rules. Let me set the stage. The championship is between Hometown Huck and the Big Time, and through a complicated series of events, they both knock each other out and are lying flat on the mat. No team can win, and it's effectively a stalemate. So what Pinky does is barge into the ring, lift Hometown Huck up, and drop him on the Big Time, meaning that Hometown Huck is pinning him and is therefore the winner. The Dexteras, commentators, crowd, everybody all cheers for Pinky and considers him the hero of the day. But he cheated. He absolutely cheated. If you did this in an MMA match, or if we're going by wrestling terms, WWE, if it wasn't staged, this would absolutely not count. In fact, this might actually get the Dexteras disqualified. This isn't just me reading too deeply into it either. This just doesn't feel like a satisfying end. Because the Big Time's whole story arc is that he's so big and strong that he can't lose. And he still hasn't lost. Oh well, the rest of the season is good, so why bother to complain? My personal favorite matches from this season are Vinny Vitty Victory vs. The Visitor, Hometown Huck vs. Sir Serpent, Evil Ira vs. the Amoeba, The Big Time vs. Tomcat, Hometown Huck vs. Evil Ira, and The Big Time vs. Wasabi. And for all of you TWF fans out there that want more than just these little shorts, don't you worry, they have even shorter episodes for you to enjoy to give you that TWF fix. They're little side skits revolving around the TWF wrestlers when they're not in the ring. They're not really that important to the plot until we get to Season 4, and they're not important again in Season 5, so I'm probably not going to mention them until we get to that point. Just a heads up. We've also got some short biographies from each wrestler, or at least the major ones, talking about who they are, where they came from, and why they wanted to join the TWF. All pretty good world building, and it makes me like the characters that much more. Now on to Season 2. Season 2 is not only the shortest season in the series, but it's also the one with the weirdest format. See, a quarter to a third of the episodes were cut from production in order to make an extended-length special episode called the Royal Thumble. While exciting and action-packed, this doesn't really change anything in the series and is honestly just kind of filler. It's fun filler, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean anything in the course of the show. What starts off as a 2-on-2 tag team wrestling match devolves into utter chaos, and whoever wins this will be the Royal Thumble champion for a whole year. Don't ask me how that's different from being the regular champion. Nobody really knows if the Dexteras are actually preventing a world domination thing here, or if this is just an ego boost. But it doesn't really matter because this was the only Royal Thumble. My guess is because the crew wanted to put more effort behind the actual episodes going forward. But again, that's just a guess. We don't have any concrete answers, at least not yet. But how's the rest of the season? Well, the few episodes that we do get are actually somewhat better than the originals. For one, due to the higher budget, they look a lot better and have much better lighting, but also the writing and stories flow way more than they did before. We've got some more wrestlers, again, some more minor ones than majors, but the important ones I want to focus on are the two new Dexteras. Face Off Phil, the hockey player from the Great White North, who's a Canadian stereotype, but he's a fun one. And Mr. Extremo, a daredevil extraordinaire who says things like dude and righteous and bogus. Get used to hearing his name, you're gonna hear it a lot. All of the major wrestlers from the previous season return and have just one fight, but some of them have some significant prominence. Specifically Hometown Huck, The Big Time, and Senator Skull. The Big Time takes on Mr. Extremo in the semifinals, and Senator Skull gets his revenge from the last season, where the Big Time got Senator Skull disqualified in his match against Wasabi. Senator Skull throws a chair at the Big Time's head, causing him to lose against Mr. Extremo, and Mr. Extremo goes on to the championship to face Senator Skull. And that's because Senator Skull has just beaten Hometown Huck. This is significant not just because the reigning TWF champion, the nicest guy in the world, has finally been defeated, but Senator Skull's gonna have a shot at the championship. Remember, he didn't go last year. If the Big Time won, Senator Skull would have won by proxy, but this time, it's the man himself in the ring, and he's not gonna hold anything back. If you're wondering why I skipped the quarterfinals and went straight to the semifinals, it's because there are no quarterfinals. Yeah, that's right. Not only do we have fewer qualifying matches, but we also don't have quarterfinals whatsoever. Again, this is because of the Royal Fumble, but here's how it goes. We have 4 wrestlers who win in the qualifiers, and then they move immediately to the semifinals, and then championship. Weird, huh? Then there's also the question of, what about the other wrestlers who won this season? Don't they get to move on as well? Yeah, no, they don't. We don't really know who decides who goes to the quarterfinals or why, or in this case, semifinals. But it's about to get weirder, don't you worry. Because of the season's overall shortness, there's no real storyline beyond Senator Skull is evil! And he also didn't fight in the qualifiers, so why is he here? But ooh, evil! Highlights from this season include, of course, the championship between Mr. Extremo and Senator Skull, Evil Ira vs. Big Star, Face Off Phil vs. the Cheetah, Itsy Bitsy vs. Fly Guy, and my personal favorite match in the entire series, Fuego vs. Danny Kaboom. In this episode, the commissioner of the Thumb Wrestling Federation wants no more violence. So the Dexteras and Sinistras are forced to be friends, and that goes just about as well as you'd expect. Starting here, Thumb Wrestling Federation really started to take off with popularity. Oh sure, it'd always been decently liked, but by now, it was starting to get a sizable fan base, and as a result, the team behind the show would take the series to new heights, and take some major risks and make some major changes. Though they wouldn't be obvious right away. We'd see what would happen in the championship, but more on that later. I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here to talk about the Thumb Wrestling Federation merchandising. Yes, Thumb Wrestling Federation got merch, and a lot of it. I've gathered some to take a look at today, so let's see if they hold up. Alright friends, it's time to look over the Thumb Wrestling Federation merchandise. From the good, to the bad, to the really weird. So let's start off with something mostly good. Thumb Wrestling Federation Complete Series Seasons 1 through 5. Only available in Australia and maybe the UK for some reason. Come on, we in the States wanted this too. Really good video quality, has all the matches, all the segments, everything you could want. Except proper design. Season 3 has its own little appendage here, but let's move past that and look at this. Say I wanted to watch Season 5 or Season 2, I gotta take these discs out. Why? What's the point? I guess it's to save money on production or something? I don't know. But if you can ignore that, I'd say it's worth getting. What else could you want, really? I guess a novelization of the series. I'm kidding. This is the Thumb Wrestling Federation official thumb book. It's got little games here, a comic adaptation of the Royal Thumble special, some caricatures and biographies of our favorite Dexteras and Sinistras, and this is my copy that I had when I was a kid. And no, I'm not going to show you my custom wrestlers in the back of this thing because I want to keep some integrity. Moving right along. Something that I totally forgot existed, and, well, to be honest, I think a lot of the fans did as well. This is a wasabi whammer. It's sort of a beanbag stress ball thing. It's filled with these little foam pellets, and man, it feels good to mash like this. Don't turn this into something weird, please. And I don't want to do that for too long because this thing is incredibly rare. First of all, it's got the tag and everything, but this was not made for very long. As it says here, 2008. So that was around the time season 2 was ending production. And in fact, I don't know if you can see this here, number 145 out of 758. Only 758 of these were ever made. And it's so rare, in fact, that I couldn't even find a picture of another whammer. There's supposed to be 8 in total. Couldn't tell you who they were for though. I couldn't even find the name of this thing until I had to look up the press release for the company that made it. Oh well, I think out of all the merch, the whammer's probably my favorite, but it's not the most famous. The most famous are the Thumb Wrestling Federation masks. That's right. The same company that made these made little masks you can put on your thumbs. And you could pretend to be the Thumb Wrestling Federation characters, but you can't wrestle with them unless you have another person. Makes being an only child really difficult. But these things kind of made it also difficult to be a TWF fan. Their quality wasn't always the best. Sometimes we'd have some really good ones. Take a look at Rolf the Reaper. This looks almost exactly like he did on the show. Weird thing about this though, he's labeled as Sir Serpent. I don't know why, but yeah, looks pretty good. Let's see if he still fits after all these years. He kind of does. Got a little bend here, but yeah, he's doing just fine. We also have some that, while they look good, you could tell that the masks were a little too detailed for a cheap line like this, such as Big Bad Billy Gotetsky. He looks fine here, but the horns kind of look a little off. But yeah, overall, just fine. Then we got some that are okay when it comes to the design. They do an okay job, but you look at them for a little while and you start noticing some inconsistencies, like Billy Batboy. His star is a different color than the rest of his face is weirdly proportioned, he's all fuzzy and weird in the back.
Hello, I'm Billy Batboy, and I guess I have a Bruce Campbell-style chin here. Look how it protrudes!
But that's not what you want to see. You want to see the bad ones. Oh yeah, let me tell you, for every good wrestler that ended up being sold to little TWF fans out there everywhere, like little Trevor, we got some really funky looking ones. And I'm going to show you the ones I got. First of all, there's the ref. Did we really need a ref mask? There's no way this was going to look good. I almost put this in the Gotetsky camp of maybe the design's a little too complex for this toy line, but come on. Come on. We've also got Fuzzy Big Time. Yeah, he's covered in hair for some reason. You have to go out of your way to screw up like this. Yeah, it's all furry and weird and ugh. And his mouth is off center and he doesn't look like the Big Time. I don't know what he's in, but it's not my face. Gary the intern here, he's the wrong color, and his mask is just ironed on. I don't know if you can tell here, but yeah, he's kinda glued on. Next up, we have really deformed, furry Danny Kaboom. What is it with the thumb wrestlers getting fur? And this is another thing I'd like to point out about these designs. None of them were ever consistent with the way they were made. Sometimes things were glued or ironed on, and sometimes they're printed on like a decal. Danny's got a little bit of everything here, and it kind of makes him look weird. Sorry, Danny, you gotta do something about that image, man. We got Grayson Glitz here. This is the only surviving one from Thumb Wrestling Federation, how I would have made it. Not weird looking, just thought I'd show it off. Hey, you guys know what I always liked about Face Off Bill? How big of a brain he had. I think this one just kind of speaks for itself. Look at this. It's like he's got a marshmallow head. But this is nothing compared to the one that blew my mind as a kid. I got a packet with Wasabi and Flashback. Wasabi looked just fine. In fact, let me show off the Wasabi that was in the package. It was this. Still kind of flat and everything from the package. Turned out just fine. Actually, probably one of the best print jobs they've done. Flashback, on the other hand, Flashback looked like this. And this is not from me keeping him in a dark, rough spot. This is not me getting him wet. He looked like this straight out of the box. This is inexcusable. The ironed-on Flash is falling off. One of his eyes is like dotted with a pen. His mouth is definitely made by a Sharpie. This is awful. How did they let this happen? So yeah, that's the quality of the masks we're dealing with, but that's not all. The masks advertised that you could get all 52 wrestlers, but keep in mind, this is before some of the new ones from Season 5 came in, so everyone before that, even Dick Thompson and Colonel Cossack, you were supposed to get them. In fact, here on screen, this is all the wrestlers that were supposed to be available in this toy line, but these were the ones that you actually could get. Yeah, about a third of them never made it to production, despite being advertised as something that you could get in a blind bag or in one of the sets that they sold individually. And I know, I tried to hunt some of these down for years, and I couldn't find it. In fact, these ones on screen, I had to go way back to the Nicktoons Network days and find the very first run, which was a limited run production thing, in order to get them at all, which means that later on, they discontinued some of the wrestlers, making the pool even more limited. And for those out there who like Stuart Ashen, he made a blind bag video of Thumb Wrestling Federation where he kept getting the same two wrestlers over and over. That was a normal occurrence. You would always get Ouch, Danny Kaboom, Knockout Ninja, all these really common ones, and then there'd be the occasional rare, and then the non-existence. I know it sounds like I'm getting really passionate about it, but this drove me nuts when I was a kid. I wanted the whole set, and it was literally impossible. That's just something I had to get off my chest after all these years. So yeah, I think the best out of all these was the Whammer, and the worst? Come on. Do I even need to say it? And now, back to the video already in progress. Okay, detour's over. Now on to Thumb Wrestling Federation Season 3. Personally, out of all 5 seasons, I'd say this one's the best. It has the consistently best matches, best writing, best themes, best tone, best story, best character portrayal, just best everything. I also really like how they handle the story, and there's only one real central story here, and it's that Bucks Gazillion, the new member of the Thumb Wrestling Federation, specifically the Evil Sinistras, just keeps winning again and again, and there's something about him that seems off. Yeah, he's nasty, he's rude, he's definitely a Sinistra, but there feels like there's something more to him than just, I want to take over the TWF to help Senator Skull. And the more we see him fight and take down top Dexteras, the more we start to see that Bucks Gazillion is hiding something deep down. But we're gonna talk about that a little bit later, because we gotta talk about the other main characters of this season. Face-Off Phil making his return from last season, Senator Skull again, Mr. Extremo again, and surprisingly not Vinny Vitty Victory. You know, the leader of the Dexteras? Yeah, he doesn't wrestle this season, and in fact, he never wrestles again. Despite being one of the main characters of the show, he never fights beyond Season 2. This is possibly to make way for characters like Hometown Huck or Mr. Extremo, but there lies the problem with TWF. As great and as funny of a show as it is, it has a major problem with character balance. We get 8 characters, or sometimes 10, depending on which season you watch, over and over again, with the same gimmick, very little progression or development, and all the interesting characters are left to the sidelines. Now it's time to talk about those minor wrestlers I mentioned at the beginning. These guys are more often than not far more interesting than the main characters we get each season. Except Evil Ira, that guy's the best. And the Visitor, he becomes a major character in Season 4. Here are some of the characters that, despite having a lot of potential, never really got to have all that much use in the course of the show. There's Sir Serpent, British royalty who seems all charming and sophisticated on the surface, but deep down, he's a conniving brute who doesn't care about anybody but himself. And maybe the Queen.
The Queen would want me to do this!
The Lost Viking, who was frozen in a glacier and is now here in modern times, and despite not having any idea where he is one of the most unstoppable and unrelenting fighters in the entire TWF. Big Star, the cousin of the Big Time, who, despite being as big and strong as his cousin, is way less intelligent. And the only reason he's on the Dexteras is because he wants to make his cousin proud. And there's many, many more like this. How come these guys never really got much of a chance and usually get about 3 matches tops, but we keep seeing Mr. Extremo, Hometown Hawk, The Big Time, Itsy Bitsy again and again, when they're basically stagnant characters that don't have a lot to offer and, let's face it, are kind of running on fumes by the time we get to Season 4. But hey, be thankful that some of these interesting characters get 2 or 3 matches, because some of them only get 1 and nothing else. Flashback, Fly Guy, Sir Serpent, Big Star, the Amoeba, and Dwayne Bramage only have 1 match, and with the exception of Sir Serpent, they never appear in the main series again. Sir Serpent just has a cameo in Season 4, but the rest of these guys, they either have a short cameo in one of the side sketches, or nothing at all. Heck, Flashback hasn't even been seen or mentioned since the pilot. Keep this in mind when we get into Season 4. Anyways, Season 3. I'm just going to tell you some of my favorite matches now, because we need to save the championship for last, since that's not only the biggest event of the season, but it's also where the show changes forever. Yeah, more on that in a minute. My favorite matches this season are Gil vs. Muggsy Thumbscrew, Captain Carpal vs. Knockout Ninja, Bucks Gazillion vs. Wasabi, Bucks Gazillion vs. Mr. Extremo, Face Off Phil vs. Queen Nefer Creepy, Pei the Purple Panda vs. Scoutmaster Scott, Queen Nefer Creepy vs. Danny Kaboom, and Itsy Bitsy vs. Milty the Clown. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Like I said, this season is the best one, no question. But it also has one of the weirdest formats to date. Not as weird as Season 2, but it establishes the trend that would be seen throughout the other 2 seasons, and if there ever was a 6th, I'm sure it'd be there too. But it kind of combines Season 1 and 2 together, in the sense that it's still a tournament, but only 4 from each side that are kind of picked at random get to progress to the next round. And they don't even have to win. Milty the Clown lost against Itsy Bitsy, but he still made it to the quarterfinals, and guess what? Lost again to Queen Nefer Creepy. I don't really get it, but hey, it makes for good TV, so it doesn't really matter. It's not all that broken and confusing, it's just something I thought I'd point out. And now we get to the championship. This, I'd also say, is in my favorites list. I didn't really want to put it there because it kind of goes without saying that this is one of the best things that the crew ever made. Why is it so good? Well, it's got a lot of action, it's got some snappy writing, it has a lot of characters on display, and it has the biggest twist in Thumb Wrestling Federation history. 3 words. The Sinistras win. Oh sure, like always, Bucks Gazillion cheats to get the victory, but he still wins. But Senator Skull doesn't take over the TWF.
What?
Bucks Gazillion has bought everything out and has paid off all the Sinistras to be on his side, so Senator Skull is kicked out of the TWF, and Bucks Gazillion now reigns supreme. What's gonna happen to the TWF? What's gonna happen to the world? Well, we're gonna have to wait till Season 4 to find out. See, with the show gaining more popularity, it seems like the creators are wanting to give back to the fans a bit and really push themselves to make some more engaging storylines to keep the fans invested, but as we'd soon find out, that wasn't really the best idea. This is kind of where the show falls apart. It's got some serialized stories, which in theory are pretty good.
Crab cakes, anyone?
It's just that they're not really executed in the best way. In all honesty, Season 4 is just fine until we get to the championship. As established previously, Bucks Gazillion has taken over the TWF, and because of his money and influence, the Sinistras keep winning again and again, except for this match, and again and again and again. Realizing that they're not going to be able to take the TWF back unless they whip themselves into shape, the Dexteras rally behind former wrestler The Stash, and finally become powerhouses once again. They start taking down Sinistros left and right, causing Sinistros to quit one by one, and eventually running back to Senator Skull. So while the championship is going on, Buck Skazillion thinks he's got it made, though is still helping the Visitor out. But Senator Skull and some of his most loyal Sinistros are staging a coup to overthrow Bucks and return the TWF to neutral control. And it all plays out really well with a lot of build-up, a lot of excitement, a satisfying payoff, and something that I find kind of impressive is the use of the side shorts for the canon story. Before now, they'd all been kinda short gags that don't really amount to anything story-wise. But this is where we see things like the Dexteras having a multi-part training course, or the Sinistros tracking down Senator Skull. But while it all plays out really well, if you happen to miss these shorts, you're not really gonna know what's going on. They talk about the events in these shorts in the actual episodes, but not for very long. Keep in mind, except for the championship, these matches are still only 3 to 5 minutes. That means they don't have a whole lot of time for the story that they're already setting up in the episodes, so they have next to no time for the story that happens outside of the ring. And while that's kind of a drawback, it's not a big enough one to really complain about. But what is big enough to complain about is who actually wins this season. It's Mr. Extremo again. Huh. Oh, well, I'm sure he deserved it and had a really big part of the story. No, he didn't. He did not whatsoever. In fact, he lost his qualifying match, but still made it to the quarterfinals. Okay, well, who else is important to this story? Face-Off Phil? Again. Senator Skull? Again. Queen Effort Creepy? Again. Itsy Bitsy? Again. The Big Time? Again. Oh hey, the Visitor, Danny Kaboom, and Muggsy Thumbscrew. That's kinda cool. But you're seeing where I'm coming from, right? It's the same characters again. And yeah, I get it. They're kind of the main characters. But when we've got such a backlog of more interesting people that are just begging for more appearances, it just feels wrong, especially since by this point, some of these matches are starting to get a little stale. Mostly because since these characters aren't super well developed or varied, the matches kinda start to be the same thing over and over again, especially when it comes to Wasabi or Mr. Extremo. And Mr. Extremo especially is a problem because he's the champion. He gets a lot of focus. How about instead of Extremo, we get Vinny Vitty Victory coming back into the ring and bringing back honor for the mighty Dexteras? Or Ouch, the Team Klutz making something of himself and taking down the Big Bad? Or James Montgomery Flagg, the son of former TWF champion and Dextera coach, The Stash, who had previously been one of the worst fighters in the league, but has now become a force to be reckoned with in this season, and in fact, made a grand return defeating Big Bad Billy Gotetsky. See? These stories, and I'm sure many more, would have fit the story that they were going for a lot better, but instead, we have a character who doesn't have any connection to the resolution and is starting to overstay his welcome. But if you ignore that, the season was still pretty good on the whole. Not as good as the last few that we got, but far from bad. My favorite episodes from this season were the championship, despite Mr. Extremo's victory, the Visitor versus Hometown Huck, Sick Vic versus Weredog, Unit 19G versus Corbata, and Face-Off Phil versus Scoutmaster Scott. And now we get on to the final season, Thumb Wrestling Federation Season 5. And from what I can tell, this one didn't air in America. I was a big fan of TWF back in the day, and I was waiting for a 5th season, but it never came around. It was only the year after it aired that I figured out that there was a 5th season, and I checked it out right away wondering, what happened? How did I miss this? But hey, I checked it out and was kinda disappointed. This is easily the weakest season of the entire show. It's not bad, but compared to what we got, this is really lacking. Let's start with the positives though. This is the best looking season by far. It's been shot in HD and the lighting is the best it's ever been. They also bring back a lot of characters who up until this point hadn't been seen for years, like the Scorchion, Gary the Intern, Tomcat, and the Cheetah. But then that's where we get to some of the bad stuff. Yeah, these guys all come back, but they all lose. Badly. Huh. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But hey, we've got some new characters, the Black Knight, Lucky O'Leary, and Cleet Cunningham. The Black Knight's a pretty interesting character who's a medieval knight who doesn't really know that time has passed. He thinks it's still the Middle Ages. When I was younger and first saw the press release with this character, I was worried that he'd be a bit of a repeat of the Lost Viking, but no. They make him charming, fun, and distinguished enough to be his own character. In fact, they're hardly similar. Lucky O'Leary is a lucky Irish guy. Okay. And Cleet Cunningham is a British soccer player. He's really boring.
Quit moving, Cleet. I'm trying to learn the science.
The best way I can describe him is take Hometown Huck, make him British, and have him kick the football around a little bit, and that's Cleet Cunningham. This is a major drawback for the season because he's gonna be here a lot. In fact, spoiler alert, he's the champion. Yeah, and he's a major player in the story. I know that one of my main complaints with Mr. Extremo's championship victory in Season 4 was that he had nothing to do with the story, but at least he was distinguishing. In a series full of colorful and unique characters that always have some kind of pull to them, even if they're not necessarily your favorite, it's amazing to me that they chose the dullest one that they've ever made to be their final champion. The story in this season sounds kind of interesting until you see how it plays out. It's sort of a spin on Evil Ira's shift to the Sinistras, only this time, it's not actually real. For a bunch of complicated reasons, the Dexteras believe that Cleet Cunningham is actually an agent of the Sinistras, while Cleet is trying to prove his innocence, but Senator Skull, catching on to this, tries to divide the Dexteras more and more by making Cleet seem that much more like a bad guy, and he does this by having a mysterious figure go to each of his matches and cause some kind of trouble, pinning it on Cleet. Cleet goes to the championship with no support, but then wins and proves that he really is a Dextera through a bunch of complicated means, courtesy of Colonel Cossack. And then it's revealed that the person who'd been doing this to Cleet the whole time, the one who's been trying to sabotage his thumb wrestling career since day one, was Enfuego!
Fuego?
And I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling niños.
Okay. Did he have anything to do with Cleet before? No. Did he have anything to do with the story before? No. It just feels like an anticlimactic reveal and it's kind of treated like a big deal, but it literally could have been anybody. The story's also written really sloppily as well. The Dexteras change their opinions on Cleet on a dime. First they love him, then they hate him, then they love him again, and it takes very little provocation to get them to either extreme. And Colonel Cossack is a major player in the story this time, and normally that'd be good, tying the commentators a bit more into the story and whatnot, but Colonel in this season is kind of annoying. They really flanderized him and made him go way too over the top with his crazy stuff, and they're kind of reaching for his gag of the week, making it pretty clear that they're starting to run out of ideas. So what that the story's a little bit rough, right? At least we've got some more of those old characters coming back. Yeah, but here are the main characters. Let's see if you can spot some familiar faces. Yes, we have Cleet Cunningham, but we also have The Big Time, Senator Skull, Mr. Extremo, Muggsy Thumbscrew, and Hometown Huck. Yep. The writing's also kind of weaker here with a lot of cheap ways for the Dexteras to win, and also more cheating courtesy of Pinky in Mr. Extremo versus the Scorchion. And overall, I think it's because the creators were trying a bit too hard to make the story, and they weren't really paying as much attention to the regular matches themselves. And since the story wasn't very good, the matches started to suffer. With that being said, there were still some standouts like Scoutmaster Scott versus Tomcat, Muggsy Thumbscrew versus Unit 19G, Danny Kaboom versus the Black Knight, and The Big Time versus Milty the Clown. The last of which only really being interesting because for once, Milty's legitimately putting up a fight instead of being a literal joke. But that's kind of it. I was really sad to see that this was the last season back in the day, but now as an adult I can kind of see why. Though it's also worth mentioning that the series' popularity was starting to die out. Sales were dropping for merchandise, it was being discontinued at a rapid rate, it was getting harder to find the show, and thus, Thumb Wrestling Federation was quietly cancelled and disappeared into the night. We never got the grand conclusion to the Dexteras vs Sinistras arc, and we didn't even get to see a battle between the leaders of each team. Oh well, one can dream, right? Yeah, in fact, that's actually what I've done. Over on my side channel, formerly known as Lidkey Library, now Spilled Milk Productions, though it was about to be changed to something else, I made several seasons of Thumb Wrestling Federation on my own. They're audio only, but using my admittedly stellar impressions, I was able to help recapture some of the magic of the show and give it a proper end. And that's not just me saying it either. People raved about these things. And I know I'm patting myself on the back here, but it's honestly kind of true. And in fact, someone actually went on the Thumb Wrestling Federation wiki and made articles about them. While I'm not for Wikipedia vandalism, all I really have to say is,
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. You don't know how honored this makes me feel.
and for you TWF fans out there that want something more official, who knows, the show may be able to come back. Not just because we're in the age of reboots where anything gets a second chance, but also because a little while ago, series creator Larry Schwartz was able to reacquire the rights to all of his shows. Meaning that if he wanted to make a reboot of this or a continuation, he's fully within his right. Whether or not he will, that remains to be seen. But even if he doesn't make any more, we still have this great, charming, action-packed series that was good from beginning to almost end. Yeah, Season 5 took a bit of a dip in quality, but it's still okay, and the rest of the seasons were a very enjoyable watch. I was surprised with just how well they held up when I first saw the show again after all those years. And hey, all the episodes are free up on YouTube, so if you want to relive your memories, or maybe you want to experience it for the first time, it doesn't really matter. You can see it if you want to, and I highly recommend that you do. It's a show that's got a little bit of everything for everybody. Yeah, it has some flaws, but what show doesn't? Really, the best way I can put it is that
this show is a crushing good time!
Well, folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? Have you seen TWF lately, or have you seen it at all? What do you think of the points I brought up, and what's your favorite match? And also, which character do you wish got more time in the spotlight? Comment below and let me know, because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. And now, it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon friends, starting with our Masters of Fate, Manny Paredes, Kev, Leaf Storm, Ryan Williams, Chen 11, Woody Woo, MD the Dude, and Diego V. And let's not forget our executive producers, Unkale, Blackjack, Edward Haas, H.R. Hoffman, who else but Zane, YouTube Milkwad, Albert Robinson, I Am Fove, Aaron Vasquez, Ravioli Supremo, and Indiscreet One. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then why not consider donating to the Patreon? There's a fancy little link in the description below for you to check out. And if you want to get more involved in the Media Mementos fan community, we've got a Discord server. There's also a link to that in the description as well. Alright folks, this was a long one, so thanks for bearing with me through this crazy young man's ramblings, and I'll see you guys next time.
Diggity dog. Breaking. Diggity dog.